Poker Face Season 2 is out now on Peacock. It's the ongoing story of Charlie, played by Natasha Lyonne, who is a human bullshit detector. In fact, there somewhere out there is a cut of her saying bullshit to 25 different guest stars on this Mystery of the Week type show. We interviewed the showrunners for Season 1. There's a different showrunner for Season 2. He's Tony Tost. He has a background in poetics. And also, he's out with a new movie in August called Americana. Tony, welcome to The Gist.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So what was your relationship to Season 1? Just a viewer?
Yeah, just a fan. Just a fan of the show. A little bit jealous that they got to that throwback 70s detective character thing before I did, because I was trying to kind of cook up my own version of it. And, and so I was just a fan, and then found out that they were, looking for somebody to run Season 2, and so I threw my hat in the ring.
Yeah. And do you analyze when you got in and you, I'm sure, made your pitch and they hired you because you understood the show? I think most people who love the show will gavell about Natasha Lyonne and the major conceit that she's a human bullshit detector. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of humor to it. But to me, the show wouldn't exist if all the mysteries weren't really tight. Mm-hmm. And I think that is either taken for granted or gets brushed over. But did that jump out at you as one of the core elements to the show's appeal? Yeah.
It's a really smartly constructed mystery show with interesting, inventive murders. And then you have to, it has to be a tough enough nut to crack that you're interested in seeing Charlie kind of, crack that nut, because since it's not a who did it,
Yes.
And so, it's definitely a key component of a good Poker Face episode, I feel.
Right. It's not a whodunit because the first reel of every episode shows you the murder. We always know who did it, and it's how did it happen or how do they crack the case. Okay. Also, compared to other great murder shows, and something like Murder, She Wrote wouldn't essentially be in the category. I kind of post-dated those 70s shows. But most of the detectives that we knew when we're solving murders didn't have any supernatural ability. Mm-hmm. So this is, in fact, an extra challenge that almost all the murders have to be solved via someone lying or the bullshit detector. So does that make it more interesting or more challenging? Or does when the challenge is achieved, is that what makes it more interesting?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a touch more challenging because it's a core element of Charlie's character. And so it's going to play into an episode, but you don't want to keep going to the same well every time.
Yes. And it's not as if the superhero ability can literally cut through and solve it. She's lying, and therefore, the episode's over, right?
Over in 20 minutes. Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's a core part of it, but you don't want to repeat yourself in how it plays out. So there is a lot of discussion in the writer's room about okay, how can we offer just, a new spin, a new variation on the bullshit detector on an episode by episode basis. Yeah.
And I talked to the Zuckerman sisters. Maybe they pronounce it Zuckerman. I have a history of mispronouncing that's around the show.
That's correct.
So I talked to them, and they're steeped in mystery. And we had great conversations where in the room, and tell me this has changed, you debated the nature of what lies could she tell, and what lies would she not be able to get away with. Like if someone is perhaps insane and is lying but doesn't think they're lying, that would be a question. So I don't know if the lore or the Bible of Poker Face has changed at all. But again, it's not a straightforward question. It's all very interesting, and depending on your answers to that, it would definitely have an effect on how each episode and plot goes, right?
No, yeah, exactly. And I think the Zucks did the hard, heavy lifting of figuring out a lot of that lore in season 1, because we for me, in the writers, there's some carryover from season 1 to season 2. Was like, okay, let's just we don't need to contradict what they did in season 1. We'll just build on it. But I mean, there were discussions. I mean, it never ended up making an episode, but we were playing around for a day or two of where Charlie is looking through a window and she sees someone talking to someone that she trusts, talking to someone else, and she knows that they're lying, but she doesn't hear the content, but she can just tell that they're lying, and that piques her interest. We ended up not pursuing, but exactly that nature. And like, well, is it, will it still carry over if she doesn't hear the voice? And we kind of decided like, yeah, there's just something she can tell by the person's body language, or just by just an element of the, friction between the truth and what the person's saying. She could pick up on something's wrong. But yeah, like that, kind of playing around with that.
Have you ever done a foreign language, her picking up lies in a foreign language that she doesn't understand?
No, but that's a good idea.
Okay, that one's free. And then the other one is maybe there's an angle to a foreign language, and you'll do great on this, where I'm just thinking, in many cultures, they'll invite you to their home, right? They'll say flattering things. So it's technically a lie, but is it a lie? Or first of all, would that scan as a lie, or just something that is necessary to say? Do utterances of etiquette, like good to see you, or you look great, that I'm sure would scan to Charlie as a lie. But there are probably some other utterances that the person doesn't even realize are a lie. I don't know what you could do with that, but it's also fascinating.
No, it is fascinating. Yeah, no, I mean that's a great. Sometimes we do get wrapped up in the just like, let's tell the mystery, but that element, like what you're talking about, just the nature of. Is there a Western centric, bias in terms of what truth is, or is there, or is there simply the content doesn't matter? It's a formality of saying these elements, like saying good morning. You're not actually curious. You're not actually, or how are you doing? You're
there
not
you go.
really interrogating somebody's state of mind, and you're saying it's just a polite way of greeting another person to let them know you don't mean them harm.
Right.
And so
right.
that element of what's truth, what's not, or does truth even come into play is an interesting fold.
Or if she's at the checkout counter and she scans all the aisles and cashiers 1 through 4 are saying "Have a nice day," and it seems like, do they mean it? And cashier 5 knows they just have to say it. Yeah. Does that come across as a lie? That's interesting too. Yeah, None of these are murder plots, but it's all interesting about what is truth and what is lie.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean that's a fun part of the conceit. It's just like that truth element of just kind of exploring that. Maybe maybe it's something that can open up potentially.
I'm also thinking about statements of hope or aspiration, or every time a politician articulates a vision for the future, is it a lie? And maybe if it's not to that politician, are they a psychopath?
Yeah.
Because have you gotten into narcissists or people who believe their own lies on the show?
I mean, I don't want to give away spoilers, but we'll come up to some area where there is it hasn't dropped yet, but there may be a character where this person's relationship to what they're saying is a little bit more complex than normal, and Charlie has to navigate that. So that's definitely in the season story.
Interesting. So the Zucks are murder people, and I don't think they've murdered people, but they've in their lives thought about hundreds of murder plots. What about you? Because I read a lot about your fascinating background and your expertise in Ezra Pound and poetics and the kind of westerns, neo-westerns that you do. I want to ask you a question about that. But what about murder plots? How steeped in it were you?
I spent 5 seasons on a sort of a murder of the week show called Lawmire, kind of a modern day Western cowboy detective show. That I suspect the Zucks are more have more expertise on this front than I do. I have I had to learn that type of storytelling, and I love that type of storytelling. But if I was to throw out my, I'm more of a Western and redneck crime type of guy than a murder plot type of guy.
What states do you think Poker Face takes place in? I know there's a clear Las Vegas, or is it a Reno element? The clear Nevada element. What else?
I mean, in season 1, she was all over the place. In season 2, we mapped it out pretty clearly. Season 1, I mean, the first episode of season 2 takes place in the Northeast, and then the rest of season 2 is in essence a road trip from Florida up to New York, and so she's kind of going up the Eastern Seaboard in essence.
Yeah. So was that in season 1? There's a quick foray into Vermont, as established by the "Welcome to Vermont" sign. Sometimes some things you don't want to get around as cliches or establishing shots.
There's cliches for a reason.
And I'm sure that "Welcome to Vermont" sign was the production crew pounded that in the side of the road where?
I mean, I can't remember, but outside of our studios were in Brooklyn, but we would our zone went out all the way like towards New Jersey. So I think, I don't remember the exact.
Somewhere in Rumson, New Jersey. Yes. Yeah. That's great. Is the East Coast, are you comfortable with that? Because I know you have this Americana movie out.
Yeah.
I know that you have Arkansas collections. You're from you lived in King County, Washington, which has been named after 2 different kings, I think, in your lifetime. Is that right?
I think that's right. Yeah. I think it switched over to Martin Luther King Jr.
How's that make you feel? How's that make the 12,000 inhabitants of King County feel? Newly proud?
I mean, King County's got more a few people, but I don't think it was a heavy topic of conversation.
It was foisted upon the people of King County.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there was resistance either. But the East Coast, I lived in North Carolina for 7 or 8 years, and we set an episode in a fictional minor league town in North Carolina in season 2. It's I don't have an insider's knowledge of like New York yet, but thankfully tons of people on the show do. So relied on them for textures and stuff like that.
The 29 loss in a row baseball team, which is a big losing streak. I know you want to establish that they're bad, but that is a massive losing streak.
It is a big losing streak. It would. I mean.
It would certainly motivate the characters to maybe contemplate engaging in the chicanery they do.
I mean, we wanted to do the research to find out what would actually be the worst losing streak in minor league baseball history, and that would be it. So that. So was it the Ashland Lookouts? Is that the minor league team that you were around in North Carolina? I was in the Durham Bulls. So, did grad school at Duke, and so
right, and of course. Perhaps no more famous minor league team in cinematic history than the Durham Bulls. Win the bull and hit the bull and wear a suit, of course, in the outfield. Still to this day, Old Durham is what I mean. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So when you get in the room and you're plotting out the season, is it driven by, well, you tell me, do you have the plots of the murderers and try to figure out where to place them, how to cast them? Or is it more, is there some element to, here's some things with her power that we could do, let's pursue that in a few episodes? But there's also the superstructure of she's being chased by the world's worst assassins with the worst aim, and she has to get from A to B. So how are you plotting out, what's really driving the episodes?
We usually start with a subculture or a world that we want to live in for an episode. And then we usually kind of start with the characters or the murder itself. So like, what's an interesting short story we can tell in an interesting world that we want to see Charlie in, where we can tell and just, like that first opening 15 minutes, like what's a good little story there where we can believe one person will kill another person and then try to cover it up. And then we kind of go from there. Sometimes there's some ideas about, a murder or a spin on the genre, like the season 2 premiere with the sextuplets, or I guess quintuplets, it ended up being that Laura Dealey, the writer on that, she pitched it as like, well, this would be a fun where all the murder suspects look the same,
right.
And there's an interchangeability. There's something inherently fun there. And then so we had that before we had like the backstory with them being kid actors and a stage mom and the location and stuff. So that was a different ways in, but generally, the baseball one, Ryan, I came into the season knowing Ryan wanted to do a minor league.
Ryan
baseball.
Johnson, your executive producer.
Right, yeah. The creator and really the creative head. I'm the showrunner, but like as I would say during production, like I'm kind of the show nudger. Like it's Ryan and Natasha's baby. I just kind of try to keep the logistical and creative train on the track. But yeah, so it's so there's some low hanging fruit or some ready made arenas that I think the Zucks didn't have time to get to in season 1 that I knew we were wanting to tackle, and then some just fresh stuff.
Yeah, and that season 1 episode, that's very Rian Johnson. It's very Knives Out because it's a closed room mystery for much of it. Yes, they go to Vermont, but there are 5 suspects, and the added deliciousness is they all look the same because they all are the same because they're all played by Cynthia Erivo. The casting, I have a general question on casting. How does it usually happen after it's written and people hold up their hand? And specifically on episode 1, how was she lured into playing these 5 roles?
Yeah, the casting process is chaos. Like that's the shorthand. Like it. So we have Mary Vernew and Brett Howe are our casting directors, and then Christine Cromer, who casts out of New York. They will go through traditional casting channels, but at the same time, Ryan and Natasha have a lot of cool and famous friends.
Yeah.
And then sometimes from the writers' room we'll fixate on a character actor or an actress that we like, and it'll be conceived. So it can come in through different doorways.
So like, sometimes you'll think of the person before you even know you could get him or her?
Yeah. So like the 3rd episode, Wyatt Kane, when he was pitching it out, he's just like an FBI agent and like parentheses John Mulaney type.
Right.
And so then Natasha's buddies with John Mulaney, so texts like, "Hey John, do you want to come play with us for 2 weeks?" And he's like, "Yeah," and we make the schedule work. And sometimes we have that same idea, but the person's not available, and so then we go to somebody else. On Cynthia, that was really Ryan is just a huge fan, so Ryan knew he wanted to direct that episode, and just reached. He's a theater nut, And obviously her star's only risen because of Wicked, but I think it's really kind of him being a fan of her stage work, knowing that because these episodes are filmed just over 10 days, which is a pretty accelerated schedule, especially for someone to pull off 5 different roles like that. So knowing you need someone with like real intense chops to pull it off. And so a multitude of reasons why Cynthia was at the top of the list.
Do you ever try to get someone and they answer, yes, absolutely, I can't do it then? So the original idea for a part to go to one actor or actress, or we would say actor now these days, they actually play another part that you film weeks later in an entirely different episode just because they wanted to be in Poker Face?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, like, we were talking with, like, Justin Theroux shows up in a later episode, and we were talking to him about an earlier episode. And so we knew that he wanted to be involved, that he was a fan of the show. And so, like, the timing didn't work out earlier. And so we kind of wrote towards him for a later episode. So sometimes that works out. It
does really emphasize the point that there are more good actors than there are good projects or good shows. I mean, the amount of good actors out there is crazy.
Yeah, no, it is. Like, there is an abundance of riches. And then sometimes there's actors that you kind of miss that, like, they stay active, but you haven't, like Jasmine Guy or I hadn't seen Katie Holmes and something.
Katie Holmes, she's in episode 2. I was like, wait, who is that? And she's with Giancarlo Esposito. What a casting choice. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So, there is definitely, an abundance of great actors out there. And especially for this show, because I think, at least for myself, I really geek out on like maybe like the casting coups I was most excited about were like Richard Kind and Carol Kane, like not necessarily like headline stars, but just like really great actors that I've just have loved for decades.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once you get Mulaney, you have the inroads to Kind. It could be argued that Mulaney was just a gateway to Kind.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, that's the only reason we cast him is just so we could get Richard to sign
What about someone younger? Because those are probably people that you watched as kids. The Kind renaissance happened a little later in his life. But who's a younger person who was where you said, I can't believe we got this person. I've always wanted to do something with them.
I mean, I was really excited about Patty Harrison. I think you should leave, and a bunch of other stuff. Getting her to come in was a big highlight for me. Yeah.
And in your new movie, which is a movie that you made a couple years ago, right? Americana?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. So it's Sydney Sweeney, and who's obviously a huge star, and Paul Walter Hauser, who would be perfect in the Poker Face universe. He's that exact guy. Is he going to be in season 3?
I mean, if we're lucky enough for a season 3, I wouldn't I've been wanting to do an episode in the world of independent pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling. Paul Walter.
Oh, you do? Yeah, he is a wrestler. Is he serious about that?
He's super serious.
He's super serious.
I saw him at an independent show in LA. Me and my sons went to see him, Major League Wrestling, and yeah, I mean, he had his forehead cut open, real blood,
Yeah.
And did an elbow drop about 8 feet off a ladder on another wrestler, breaking through a wooden table, landing on concrete floor, and just kind of doing it for love of the game. Yeah.
Does he wrestle as a character?
Yeah, I mean, he wrestles, under his own name, but like with any good wrestler, it's an elements of his own personality, but exaggerated. So there's a little bit of a, Hollywood Paul Walter Hauser elements to his yeah.
It's so good. It's pretty much like Daniel Day-Lewis and shoemaking. Is him in wrestling?
No, exactly. Yeah, it's just you got to put in the reps and make it real. Yeah, he's method acting for a method research for some future.
Yeah.
Future.
So I will admit I haven't seen Americana. It's exactly, especially after talking to you and knowing the cast, I saw the trailer. It does seem to have some overlaps with Poker Face, especially now that you're the showrunner. American West, a brown burnt umber color palette, and women who didn't want to pick up a gun being forced to fire it.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a reason why I was lucky enough to get this gig. I think there was like some of it was me making my case, but I think there's a genuine aesthetic overlap in the sensibilities, a kind of grounding in maybe 1970s New Hollywood storytelling as a key reference point, and being interested in quote unquote flyover America, and digging kind of populist, maybe not highbrow genres, but coming in to them from a position of genuine affection. So yeah, I think there's a real overlap. Yeah.
Can you make a Western without it kind of commenting on every Western around and before it in a way that's maybe different from other genres?
You can try, but I think it's inevitable at this point in the there's so much wrapped up in the mythology of the West and in the mythology of the genre, and the genre itself is so wrapped up in a certain vision of America and who America belongs to, that like whether or not you intend to or not, a modern day Western, whether set in the present day or in the past, is going to inevitably also be a commentary on the Western itself, I think.
Is it still the case that when you make a Western, and even when you make an independent one, someone will give you the assessment, well, Westerns are an unpopular genre? Is that, and so that's a little bit of a hurdle to overcome. Is that still said, even though there have been some pretty successful, like True Grit remake and some pretty successful Westerns in the entire, what is it? The what verse do they call it on Paramount?
With, the like Taylor Sheridan verse?
Yeah, the Sheridan verse. So that is my question. Has that, and maybe that didn't really occur or hit when you were making yours, but is it still, okay, as you know, there's going to be more of a heavy lift than sci-fi or gangster?
It's a major uphill climb to do anything Western connected, because I think, it's not seen as an aspirational genre, It doesn't.
Okay.
And it doesn't, not to get to, most of the decisions about what gets greenlit are from people from pretty well off backgrounds in Los Angeles and New York, and I don't know that there's a lot of just personal enthusiasm for the Western genre. There's exceptions to that, but it's to get Americana made, we had to get the cast together first and kind of go out with a talent package as the finance, the sizzle to get it kind of financed, because the genre, first time filmmaker, flyover setting, kind of a new take on the Western, those were kind of strikes against it. So yeah, it's definitely an uphill climb.
Do you think it should be? Or are they making these mistakes? I understand the motivations of people, and maybe all the Boston movies get made because there are a bunch of people who either went to college in Boston or are familiar with Boston, and Affleck is a big guy in Hollywood. So is it just a consequence of there aren't many people from Springfield, Missouri, and King County, Washington, and Arkansas, or are they actually using their backgrounds or not really realizing not just the power of the art, but the potential of the filmmaking in a way that, were it applied to other walks of life, we could call discrimination, let's say?
I mean, I want to be careful about, but I think there's an unintentional bias against rural / flyover type of stories, and I think, and then the mistake gets made that there's an underserved audience there. And then Taylor Sheridan comes along and Taylor Sheridan had I don't know the guy, but he had Paramount was the only place that would program Yellowstone. Everybody else passed on it.
Right.
And Paramount was a new network, and they just needed something. And then lo and behold, it has a huge audience because people actually like that kind of stuff. I think it's a kind of it's just a form of storytelling that's just not everybody's going to love, but there's always kind of an audience for it. But then I think the assumption is that, well, Taylor Sheridan has, he knows the secret and nobody else does. He's a really good storyteller, but yeah, there's other people who can, tell stories in this space. There's just a large underserved audience. I mean, they're being served better now because of Taylor Sheridan and some other things. But yeah, I think it's not an active thing. It's an unconscious kind of, it's probably the reason why there's too many, there's, more shows set, in New York or in Silver Lake neighborhood in Los Angeles and stuff. There's not a huge, I think people in the industry are kind of in their own little bubble, everybody's in their own bubble, and they just assume that the audience is like them with a similar background when there's actually, I think, a bigger diversity in terms of, every facet to an audience. And sometimes, we all have our own blinders, and I think that's just one of the industry right now.
You also use the word aspirational. It's not aspirational. So in your estimation, if there is a choice between to greenlight two things, and one is 20-something young urban professionals on the make, and the other one is people who maybe have a shotgun in the back of their pickup, they're always going to go for the first. Is that essentially the critique?
I think that's part of it. And I think some of it, I mean, some of it is, it's a little bit of carryover from the days when advertising was a bigger deal.
Right.
And I think, there was a demographic, both in terms of age, but in terms of kind of profile that advertisers were interested in. And it wasn't a sort of rural or, middle-aged or older audience. In streaming, I don't think that matters as much, but I think a little bit of that assumption has carried over to the new economic model. I've always been wanting to go back. There's this point in the early 1970s called the rural purge, when networks realized that advertisers weren't interested in a rural audience. And the same year, everything from Green Acres to Hee Haw to the Johnny Cash Show all got canceled. And that was this whole shift in TV culture. Now that's just, I just always have found that fascinating, just about in terms of our, you grow up with a certain conception of what America looks like. And so much of that, especially for probably our generation, being raised on TV, how these behind the scenes advertising conversations influence our kind of vision of what actually America looks like and how that gets skewed. It's an interesting, however you fall on your own preferences, it's just something I find interesting.
It is interesting, and I know you wrote the 33 and a third book on Johnny Cash, which is a great series. So what do you think he's so admired, but he's become an icon, and like everyone, as happens with so many icons, the icon then takes on some elements of myth, right? So what do you think that people get wrong about the real Johnny Cash, that you just by, I don't know if you ever met or interviewed the guy, but just by engaging deeply in his works, you figured out?
Yeah, I never met him. I saw him perform once as a kid. My parents, as a side job, did security and sold T-shirts at country concerts as a kid, and I would tag along, and that was part of my kind of like love of country music and country culture. My book is actually like exactly what you're talking about. Like I'm very, at least in the book, very uninterested in like the real Johnny Cash. What I was interested in is how like he at this late stage, these albums with Rick Rubin that he did at the end of his life, how he purposefully, I think, made himself into a mythic figure.
Yeah.
Kind of reinvented himself. And part of it, my argument is that he kind of connected his own personal, almost mythic biography with just the story of the country and this connection between, like religion and violence and justice and kind of these core elemental like conflicts in the American psyche he kind of put onto the Man in Black figure and kind of sang from that point of view and kind of sang through, incorporated these elements into like the Man in Black figure.
Right,
and so like
right.
so for me, like part of the argument was that he's like to me, like the real Johnny Cash, I'm only interested in him as an artist. And like to me, he's like almost like Herman Melville, like a great novelist, or Mark Twain. But like his great creation is like the mythic version of Johnny Cash, the Man in Black. Like he's like he both embodied this novelistic creation, this character. So he performed this character and like embodied it, but he's also the author of it. And it was like this lifetime project. And then at the end, he's like this mythic folklore figure. But I think it was very purposeful in his on his part.
Melville, Johnny Cash, all the Mark Twain. These are writers who defined America to itself.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Twain celebrated and quite wealthy in his lifetime, although I've been reading that he had to do tours and stuff. Melville pretty much ignored and penniless. Cash, rich and poor and up and down. But probably by the end, well, you tell me, did he not, in the Man in Black figure, did he ignore his very real, sincere country portion of his entire genre? Not country, Christian portion of his entire genre.
No. He was always super, like towards the end, like he never sold that out. Like, like one of the last I think his favorite album he ever did was like My Mother's Hymn Book, which was like him solo with his guitar just singing Christian hymns.
Right.
And, even towards the end when he made his comeback as this kind of rebellious Man in Black, cool figure, he still kept performing with the Carter family, there's still a religious element in that. So yeah, he never, like that was all tied together. And I think it was interesting to see. I think for some people really like the version of like the cool, flipping the bird, playing at Folsom Prison version of Johnny Cash. And it's, and some people I think preferred that version, but like to me, it's both of those. It's that Christian, very faith-centric version, and also this kind of wild man version. It's like it's the tension between the two that's so interesting.
Tell me about Ezra Pound. Is it true that he was the classic paranoid person for whom people were really out to get him?
Oh, well, I mean, he brought it upon himself. So guy from rural Idaho, self-made, poetic genius, kind of one of the key figures of modernism, sort of discovered T.S. Eliot, earliest maybe supporter and publisher of Robert Frost, and a great innovator in terms of translation, and then also wildly anti-Semitic and fascist-loving person who was moved to Italy to court and flatter Mussolini. Yeah. And so again, it's this contradictions at the heart of this figure. Like he brought it upon himself. He went to he was a traitor to his country. Went to Italy, broadcasting about how Franklin D. Roosevelt should be assassinated. Yeah,
but was that because he was insane?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, like that degree of he probably was. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like I'm not good at Clint. Like sometimes for me, if you like put a a label on someone as insane or uninsane, you like dismiss everything. Like,
that's true, but
like
I know, but they put him in a hospital for years, so someone had to put the label on. And I was just wondering, as someone who knows a lot about him, was that a means of stifling him, or was that possibly a accurate description of what was
my
going
theory
on?
actually is like he probably should have been executed after World War II, and he probably would have been, and the basically putting him away in a mental institution where he had a pretty, as far as I can tell, pretty chill existence for about 10 years before he left again, was a compromise so that he wouldn't be executed.
Yeah.
And so it was a way of punishing him for his crimes and to kind of keep him from being killed because he was a notable literary figure. So yeah, it's a complicated, naughty issue.
Yeah,
naughty, it's KNOTT.
I know. He's more than naughty. He's traitorous and anti-Semitic. Yeah. Do you think there is any connection between mental illness and artistry?
Yeah. I mean, there is, but I think there's probably mental. I don't think mental illness respects any boundaries in terms of professions. I do think there's some, and I don't want to romanticize like you have to be crazy to be an artist. You don't.
No.
I'm a pretty functional person.
Right. But we've all seen the pictures of Rembrandt before his work before he got into Florid Delusion. Was afflicted by him, and it definitely changed. And there's this recording artist now, and they Kanye West. Don't know if you're familiar with him, but something like that is going on. So it's not true that exactly what you're saying. It's not that if you have to be a little crazy to be a genius. Yeah. But at the same time, there's so much evidence of this, and I don't know exactly what to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, so I have kind of woo-woo theories of art where I see the artist as, in essence, a vessel through which other energies and forces come through. And so I don't really it's even from Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound said like the artists are the antenna of the race, of the species. Or another poet, Jack Spicer, thought of the poet as a radio, and then you tune it to something and aliens send, messages through you, or like, ancient Greeks, the muses speak through artists. And so there's a certain, I think, lots of artists, I think, like a vulnerability to outside forces, energies, an ability to open yourself up and let things in is wrapped up in the artistry of a lot of artists. And that I think that probably goes hand in hand to, if not mental illness, then just like that vulnerability can carry over into other spheres. There's maybe not a closed offness that maybe other professions promulgates that maybe artists, it kind of rewards an openness to voices.
Do you embrace that? Think that's going on with you in your own art?
I try to. So I very much never want to use like I never write. I never drink while writing. And I'm not a heavy drinker anymore. I was like in my 20s, but even then I made sure not to like drink while writing because I didn't want to fall in love with that romantic image of just like, I have to be drunk to write. And
also what would happen if you what would happen if you came out with something great? Then you'd be state dependent. Yeah,
and then it can also become a crutch or an excuse for bad behavior. I've never wanted to do that, but I do kind of. I do believe in like when I'm working on a script, the script isn't really working until the characters start talking to me. Like what that works, is that an active imagination comes from me, or is that an outside thing and I'm a third mediating thing? I don't know. I mean, I don't analyze it too much. I don't. But yeah, so I do believe that there's things that I am an instrument for other elements, and sometimes it's just elements of the medium or the genre I'm working in, or the archetypes or the myths that does that work, and then it's my job to kind of manipulate them or fine tune them. There's different ways of kind of framing it, but I definitely am not a self-expression type artist. I'm a host type artist. I like to think.
When you are a showrunner on Poker Face, you're a manager, but you're hired because of your artistic achievements and sensibilities. So how much are you a vessel during that? Or do you just totally put that aside and like, all right, I'm not letting the muses speak through me. I just have to get these shots in order to stay on schedule?
Yeah, it's a little bit more of the managerial, hopefully a managerial role. Like I'm basically downloading Ryan's vision, trying to also do the things that will help Natasha do what she brings to the show, and then it's never like this is coming through me or this is coming from my heart. In a way, it's more like, yeah, I'm trying to kind of be the tendon or the glue, keeping all these things together, and then hopefully applying some good critical taste or aesthetic taste in the process, and that's where the artistry comes in. But it's very different. It's a different thing than, say, Americana, which came from me and I think is reflective of my my inner life in a way that, say, like I'm super proud of Poker Face. I think it's great, but it's reflective of Ryan's vision, not mine. I was brought in to kind of help execute it.
Does it get frustrating, or I don't want to say stifling, but is it a choice you made and you understand the gig? And I am gleaning from your entire background. You come from working people who know to work hard, and this is what you've signed up for. So you're not one to be frustrated that your artistic ambitions are being subsumed by someone else's vision. But is that could that be a source of frustration if you didn't have other outlets? Yeah,
no, it would. I mean, the money helps.
Yes. No. Well, that's what I was thinking. Do you need it? Like, I would expect that most people in Hollywood's. Now, when I say do you need it, I don't mean are you rich. It doesn't seem to me that maybe you are the kind of person who is driven by having to keep these jobs as showrunners on hit TV shows.
Oh, no. I mean, I totally. I've got, I've got bills, I've got two kids in high school, two sons in high school who are going to be going to college. And thankfully my wife has a very good job, but I'm definitely like the nice thing about Poker Face is like it's a good job. It's a really good show. And I genuinely really enjoy the show. So like, would I be happy if my career was just jumping from gig to gig like that? Probably not. Like, so like part of it is if there's a rhythm to my career, it's like I'll go in and work on, I wasn't the showrunner, but I was kind of like one of the, like a co-EP, like a number 2 in a room for the second season of The Terror. And that kind of bought me some time and some money to like write and pursue Americana. And like, so in the same way, I'm kind of coming out of Poker Face. And I'm like, okay, well, this buys me a little bit of time to try to get my own, my next movie or my own creation of a TV show going. And if, look up, 6 months from now or 9 months from now, and none of those are going into production, maybe then I look and see if there's another kind of job where I can step in where it's not necessarily a compromise. I don't want to do something, I like to try to be kind of picky and do things that I think that I could be passionate about, but where I would be taking it, it's probably somebody else's vision. It's a paycheck, and but it's also hopefully also somewhat creatively satisfying. So yeah, it's a juggling act.
Yes.
in a way.
So last thing I want to ask you about, I was just doing a little research on you, and you came up with a period drama called Damnation, which I will admit I never heard of, and I still can't hear of it because I guess Netflix just took it off. You blew my mind with the log line. It said amidst the American labor wars of the Great Depression.
Yes.
That's if Westerns are a big swing, tell me about pitching that and saying, yes, I think America is ready, because I'm keen on it, but America is ready for a series where the Pinkertons are the bad guys.
There's maybe a reason why that just ran for one season, but
sounds like a great idea, though.
I think so too. I'm really like Americana and Damnation are kind of like my two babies. I mean, the first time my former agent, and I still think highly of her, we were having breakfast, and I was just like, okay, I think I have this idea for a TV show. It's set, in Iowa in the Great Depression. It has to do with the labor wars. Maybe we can shoot in black and white. And she did a literal spit take. And she's just like, Tony, that is by far the least commercially promising.
You just kept layering on less and less commercial. Iowa, labor, watch this, black and white.
Yeah. So that was, but yeah, so I went, what I did is I went and wrote the first 2 episodes and showed like, no, it can be kind of violent and pulpy and interesting. And then it kind of Trojan horse in the labor history element, but kind of foregrounding, like trying to tell a Clint Eastwood Western in essence, but in John Steinbeck country. Yeah.
Have you seen Salt of the Earth, that movie, that blacklisted movie?
No, I haven't. I mean, I just watched a documentary called that, but I think you're talking about something different.
Yeah, this is a movie set based on the New Mexico labor strike. And I think this might be exaggerated. It's the only movie that was killed by the blacklist. It exists. They shot it, and then they couldn't get distribution. And I interviewed John Mankiewicz, who is a descendant of that Mankiewicz, and it's fascinating. You would love it. That is my recommendation for you, Salt of the Earth. And they used real labor activists and real farm laborers as big characters. Like the second lead is a real laborer. It's fascinating.
Oh, that's cool. No, I definitely have to check that out. Because, like it's that strain, like, things will pop up here and then, but like, there definitely is, like, there's this movie from the 70s, The Spook Who Sat by the Door, which was likewise set in the black community about like a black man who is hired by the CIA and then comes back to his neighborhood and foments like actual overt revolution, and that was like likewise like repressed upon release. And like this history of these kind of type of stories is fascinating. So I definitely want to check that out.
I gotta watch that. Well, I want to thank you. The new season of Poker Face runs on Peacock through July. It's going on now. It's I'm maybe even going to say an improvement on season 1. And Americana will be. Well, tell us, Tony, where can people watch that?
That'll be in theaters August 15th.
August 15th. Yeah. For Sydney Sweeney and professional wrestler Paul Hauser. All right, thank you so much, Tony Tost of Poker Face, Americana, The American West, Poetics, and A Serious Damnation that I somehow got to find. Maybe he'll send me a copy on beta. Thank you so much, Tony.
Awesome, thanks. A lot of fun. Really appreciate it.